roughly 1 in 1,000 males in the U.S. is HIV positive. That means that 999 out of every 1,000 are not infected.
In your expert opinion, was Greg the cause of Sandra's HIV?
No.
Why not?
The quick progression of Sandra's HIV infection indicates Greg is not the most probable source. It is very unlikely for Sandra to have gone from having full-blown AIDS in 2 years or less. Generally, only 2% of HIV-positive people have the disease progress to AIDS in less than 2 years. 25 to 35% will develop AIDS within 7 years, and 50% will develop AIDS within 10 years. Given the statistics, it is much more likely that Sandra had the disease before she had sex with Greg.
We have no further questions.
Oh, does the plaintiff wish to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. You have testified at 20 trials in the past 2 years.
Yes.
And at most of those trials, you have testified for the defendant.
Yes.
The defense is paying $250 per hour for your work on this trial, correct?
Yes.
You only met with Greg and his attorney a couple days ago to discuss this case.
Yes.
So before a couple days ago, you didn't know anything about this case?
No, I didn't.
You never met with Sandra?
No.
And you never met with Dr. Braddock, the doctor who has been treating Sandra?
No.
In your statement, you said that Greg was not in any of the known risk groups, correct? Can you repeat those risk groups for the jury?
Sex with multiple partners, homosexual sex without a condom, and intravenous drug use, and receiving a blood transfusion prior to 1985.
So Greg, having had more than 8 sexual partners, would put him in a high-risk group.
Yes.
Well, Greg having had a blood transfusion puts him in this high-risk category, correct?
Yes.
We have no further questions.
Does the defense have any more witnesses? The defense rests. Lawyers will now give their closing statements.
Would you like some water to sing?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have shown today that Greg Mason legitimately transmitted HIV to Sandra, and therefore he's responsible to provide Sandra's damage to help cover her medical expenses. We heard from Greg that he knowingly had intercourse with Sandra on the same day he got an HIV test, and he never told Sandra about the test. Based on his own expert by having a blood transfusion, Greg was part of one of the 3 types of people identified to have a high risk of having HIV. Greg also admitted to having a higher number of sexual partners, which created a higher risk for him to come in contact with the virus. Greg knowingly had intercourse with Sandra without a condom. He never told Sandra about the risk of him having HIV. He merely suggested they should have intercourse. They should have intercourse without a condom. He knowingly put Sandra's health at risk by having intercourse with her without proper protection that night. Because of this disease given to her by Greg, Sandra can't work, she can't take care of herself, she has been isolated by those closest to her, and now lives out a death sentence. We ask you, the jury, to find that Greg legitimately transmitted HIV to Sandra and further award damage. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the burden is on the plaintiffs to prove to you that Greg is the only person Sandra could have track the HIV from. They want you to forget that Sandra had intercourse with another person. They want you to forget that Sandra is the one who wanted to have sex that night and insisted that they have sex even when she was aware that they didn't have condoms. Sandra admitted to being the one to suggest they had sexual intercourse, knowing that they did not have condoms. Sandra provided the contraceptive gel she had from
She was familiar.
with the gel as she had used it before in her prior sexual relationship. On the label, it clearly states the product does not protect against HIV, and Sandra wanted to have intercourse regardless. Further, in order for Sandra to recover damages, she has to prove to you that she is less than 50% responsible for getting HIV. Less than 50%. Let's look over the facts again. Sandra admitted she's the one who wanted to have sex. Greg never forced Sandra to have sex with him. In fact, he said they shouldn't because they didn't have condoms. It takes two to tango, folks. She voluntarily had sex with Greg, which makes her 100% responsible for her sexual health. You heard from both the medical experts in this case that it's rare for HIV to progress as quickly as it has in Sandra's case, which means it's likely that Sandra had HIV before she even met Greg. Lastly, please remember Sandra is not the only one in the room suffering from this heartbreaking disease. We ask that you, the jury/judge, find Greg not responsible for negligent transmission of HIV and not to award damages to Sandra for her own decisions. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the evidence in this case has been presented and the attorneys have completed their summations. We now arrive at the time where you, as the jurors, are to perform your final function in this case. At an outset, let me express my thanks and appreciation to you for your attention to this case. I would like to commend counsel for the professional manner in which they have presented their respective cases, and for now, the courtesy to the court and juror during the course of this trial. As jurors, it is your duty to weigh the evidence calmly and without passion, prejudice, or sympathy. The verdict must represent the considered judgment of each juror and must remain unanimous as to the charge. This means all of you must agree if Greg Mason is responsible for negligently transmitting HIV to Sandra Williams. As it is your duty as the jurors to consult with one another and to deliberate with a view to reaching an agreement, each of you must decide the case for yourself, but do so only after an impartial consideration of the evidence with your fellow jurors. You are the judges of the facts.
All rise.
I'm gonna meet you out there. Yeah, you can sit down.
Standing with the camera.
two things really quickly. Okay, so this is what's gonna happen. Your jury for woman is Lena. Lena is running the show. Lena gets that. So at the end, Lena, listen. Once you guys have come to a decision, Lena's gonna circle whatever you decide on here. When you come back in, you sit down, and then Lena, you're gonna hand this to the bailiff, who's gonna hand it to the judge, and then go forward, and you know your part. Here's the one thing that I wanna remind you, and she said it in there, but it might not have picked up, and this is important for you guys to remember. I think you guys will be the best jury on this, because I'm really, I get that I have to remind you of this. You wanna make sure that you are not, there's no conjecture, which means you're not making things up. It's just the things they presented. So you might have some ideas like what if, but you can't do that. It's just what the lawyers presented to you, okay? You guys ready? All right, do your thing, Lena, you got this.
Ross, they're all arguing down there about your case.
I heard it.
They can't stop yelling at you.
Alright, who gonna go first? Who gonna go first?
What we supposed to say, like?
You supposed to argue whether who's guilty.
Okay, who thinks they're guilty?
Both of them wrong.
He's guilty.
I think
Greg guilty.
Sandra. I think Sandra had sex with more people than Greg.
He had sex with the ex-boy.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
Who do you think gave her AIDS? The guy
I
or
think
the girl?
Sandra's ex gave her.
Gave him.
Oh, I'm the bailiff.
Man, Sandra guilty. Cause it take 10 years to fully develop AIDS, and she got it in 2 years after having sex with Greg. That don't make sense.
So
Shut
she
up.
got it from her ex.
That don't make sense. Second of all, I forgot.
So y'all saying
You
Sandra?
didn't forget. Shut up.
Sandra got HIV from her ex.
I think Greg is guilty.
Oh, shut up.
I think she's guilty because, like what Kamari said, it takes more than 2 years to develop AIDS. And then she said she decided to sleep with him after he refused multiple times. So basically, she forced him to have sex with her.
Oh, but then I kind of think Greg already had HIV. And then
He gave it
I think just both of them just had.
But it's another thing. Like, it's still her fault either way. Like, she wanted to get freak nasty with me. She ain't had no condoms.
She's the
the
little gel.
label on the gel said not HIV preventive or protective or whatever.
But it is Greg's fault for not.
But at the same time, you like Greg, he kind of told his friend or whatever the guy, that he probably gave it to her.
But either way, it still don't take freaking 2 years to develop AIDS. So either way, she ain't wrong. So she guilty.
Yes.
She gave my man.
Greg.
Are y'all ready to go back in?
She burned my man. That's messed up.
So y'all saying Sandra is guilty?
Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, now we're supposed to vote. We already discussed it. We're gonna vote.
Who thinks she's not guilty?
Who thinks Sandra is not guilty? Who thinks Sandra is innocent? Okay, nobody. Who thinks Sandra guilty? Alright, let's go. Let's boogie woogie.
Sandra ain't get what's coming to her. She nothing in the. Wait, you can't come in yet. Good, everybody. Wait, dumb.
Stop asking who won.
Excuse me, Miss Briggs.
Shut up.
It's not very too long.